Welcome to the second part of a special episode of Over the Top, Under the Radar. It's a conversation between director Steve McQueen and myself, recorded live at an Intelligence Squared event at Union Chapel in London in April. Steve and I discussed Resistance, the photographic exhibition which debuted at the Turner Contemporary in Margate and is now moving to the Modern 2 in Edinburgh. We take moderated questions from the audience and we chat about his work. The photographs are also in a book form for which I wrote the introduction, which is published by Monument Books. We're honoured to be able to bring the conversation to our platform as a thank you for your support of Over the Top and Under the Radar. If you enjoy the pod and find value in what we do, please consider donating. The packages start at just £5 plus VAT a month, and if you already donate, please consider upgrading your membership. Search Over the Top, Under the Radar on Patreon. Now here's the second half of Steve McQueen and myself, recorded live at London's Union Chapel.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us at the beautiful Union Chapel today. My name is Mia. I'm a producer at Intelligence Squared, and it is my absolute pleasure to be bringing you this very special event with Steve McQueen and Gary Younge. Now, before I hand over to our speakers, I'd just like to give a huge thank you to the amazing teams at Fourth Estate, the Thomas Dane Gallery, and of course Turner Contemporary for allowing this event to happen and enabling us to share these incredible images with you today as well. Now, if you enjoyed tonight's conversation, do make sure to check out the Intelligence Squared program in full on our website. We're about to announce some really exciting events for the autumn, including with the incredible author Arundhati Roy. So you can sign up for our newsletter to be the first to hear when those are launched. But for now, I hope you'll join me in giving a warm round of applause for your host this evening, acclaimed author and journalist, Gary Younge.
I want to talk about the challenges that there were in selecting the things for the exhibition, a kind of trying to be panoramic without being encyclopedic, without tick boxing, that through the span of the exhibition and the book there is people campaigning about gender, about sexual orientation, around racism, around the environment, around disability, but it doesn't feel like, right, we've done the disabled, tick, right, okay, let's go for we need to get the black people now. And so I'm intrigued at how, and also a mix of regions that the women in Hull, the Pan-Africanist Congress in 45 in Manchester, the Jarrow marches and so on. I'm wondering whether the selection was painful, was it hard? Was there a lot left on the cutting room floor?
Well, that was Clary and the team over years of sort of debate and selection and discovering photographs, finding photographs. That, again, it takes time. It just takes time. It's not something one could sort of, and you don't want a didactic nonsense of, that's not the game. That's not the aim. There's a fluidity, there's a certain kind of journey. And I think over a period of time, things just fell into place. It's like a big jigsaw puzzle. And finally, you get those pieces, and no, there's something's wrong there. And there's also a feeling, Again, it's interesting how, as great writers of history, are the best poets. The best lyricists are the best storytellers. So, as curators, as selectors, and could you guys stand up, please? I mean, Clary, you're standing up, and you're standing up. Clary, I don't give a fuck. Stand up.
You got to stand up now.
Yeah, please.
There you go.
Amazing. They're going to kill me for doing that, but I don't care. But no, That's it. Again, you have to find the rhythm, or not even the rhythm, or the reason. And sometimes you're surprised on what comes forward and what gets pushed out. And how one image could say a lot more than two or three, or add on to something else. Again, it's finding it, and that's the joy. That's the joy of curating. That's the joy of making. Making is very important to make, because you don't know what's going to come out. So to make something, you sometimes, I want to do that, but you have to experiment, you have to fail, you have to make. And making is failing, making is finding, making is discovering. That's exciting. And then it brings you to a place where it will never ever occur through not making. So whatever you're doing is about making. And so making this one of the central things of your life, because you will discover things that you will have no aware of. If you don't open your mouth, you don't hear nothing. If you don't put one foot after the other, you don't go places. So to make, to find your path,
So that sounds like there's an element of peril in there, because you may make something and then think, actually, that's not that good.
Fail with it. Beckett said, fail better. Yeah, and it's one of those things where, a so-called mistake is a discovery. I don't know what that is. Again, I'm never. There's a certain sort of excitement when something happens in that way. Even if it's a failure, it's a discovery, because that will lead on to that. But, going from gelatine to this book. Kodak cattle ranches in the Midwest. There you have it.
I mean, I'm intrigued. You talked about Adam Hochschild's book, King Leopold's Ghost, which is about the Belgian atrocities in Congo. With Blitz, you talked about being inspired by a picture of a young black boy during the war, and thinking that's my in.
Yeah.
Does that happen often, that your inspirations are kind of come from these moments that are prompted by other pieces of art or other photographs?
No, often no, because not really. No, that just happened because I think sometimes you become a magnet and you want something so badly it comes to you. The image of the child was my in just because of innocence, and maybe because of year 3 again beforehand, children. So again, it's about. For me, it's about real life. I'm not interested necessarily in art about art. I think that's the most boring thing in the world. Art about art. Shoot me in the face twice, or a film about a film. I mean, it's more real life. Life is way more fascinating. And having a camera and having a boom to record something in real life, or discover something which you don't know how it's going to develop. That's exciting because it's life. And again, it goes to Occupy City too. We can talk about that later as well.
About what?
Occupy City.
Occupy Sydney.
The film, I did a documentary about the occupation of the Netherlands, the Nazi occupation of the Netherlands.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I mean, I was interested in talking to you about that in terms of the degree to which kind of historical things may be becoming more and more interesting for you. That the occupied city, if I'm right, is about the occupation of the Netherlands by the Nazis.
Yes. Are we going off record here because we talk about the book? I apologize.
No, because there is a connection there in terms of history. Yeah, so
okay.
You're good. But there was something you wanted to say about occupied city.
I forgot.
Okay. Well, that's there's nothing like honesty. All of the pictures are black and white. That has to be deliberate, and I'm wondering if you could talk us through why that would be. Obviously, the earlier ones would have been, but the later ones might not have been.
Well, I think it was about context and the whole idea of, again, I think there's this kind of focus. I wanted to focus on the form and the immediacy. Again, I think that's what we wanted to do, really. It was about form and the immediacy. And I think sometimes with color, again, now we're all used to these sort of things with on our phones, and we're doing this, and everyone's a photographer, and yeah. But it just wanted that kind of broadsheet, that kind of news, journalistic kind of quality of information. I think that's what we wanted to focus on, the information. And through information, there's a certain kind of what you do with it. And I think the color, it was for me, it was just a bit too, it was too defocused, it was a bit confetti, I don't know, because within the context of this, it had been jarring. And again, that is another, obviously there was a curatorial choice of how you present something and how do you get the viewer to focus in what one is looking at. That's all. I just wanted information and form and weight, Again, sometimes with color, it takes away it makes things more lighter than they actually are. Hence, that's why black and white was so, and people stuck with black and white for, a number of years. I mean, like, can you imagine some like it hot in color? It'd be too busy.
So we have some questions, and I'm going to flip between these questions and my questions for the rest of the evening. We have a question from Helen, who asks, how do you know when a story demands to be told as film rather than fine art or prose? What does cinema give you access to that other forms do not?
Well, the subject demands, for me, the subject demands the form. The subject has always demanded what it wants or needs to be. A good example, I suppose, is Hunger, the first film I made. And it just told me it needed to be a feature film. And I remember I was doing some research on it, and it was Pauline Kael. Pauline Kael had this interview with Godard. I think it was 72 or something, in Museum of Modern Art. They did an interview. And then things just turned me on in a way. There was an interview with Godard and Pauline Kael, and Godard said that, he said that no. It was later on. Must have been like, anyway, he said that must have been the 80s. He said that the Banamonoff and like people like Bobby Sands were childish. I can't remember this. Banamonoff, and I was like, what was it? And I don't know, it just got back to me in my own head. And I don't know what, maybe I took that out of context, but I just remembered as a child, the only power I ever had as a child, what time you go to bed, what clothes you wear, etc., is controlled by your parents. But the only time you could resist is refraining from eating. And everyone has similar knowledge, memories of that. You refrain from, that's the only power you ever had, just to refrain from eating, and then you were sent upstairs to bed without any food. And somehow that was my in to Bobby Sands and to being a film. It needed to be a film. I don't know why. That was it.
But are there things? So each subject has its form.
Yes.
But are there? Certainly, there are some subjects that you can do in a range of forms, right? I'm just wondering, why did it say to you this has to be a feature film? What was it about it that made you think nothing else will do for me?
I think because it had to be said.
Right.
It had to be said, and I think these things were like swept. The Hunger. Don't forget that time. It was swept beneath the carpet. These men, who died. 11 men died through starvation in a British prison cell. And they were swept beneath the carpet. And for me, it needed to be revealed. It needed to be exposed. And the biggest way of exposing it was on film, 35 millimeter. That was it.
I'm interested in what you said earlier about that film giving license for conversations that hadn't or couldn't have taken place before.
I remember very well when we did 12 Years a Slave, and it was Trayvon Martin had just been murdered. And we couldn't we were at the Black Journalists Association conference. Where was it? Were we in Atlanta? And I remember we showed the trailer because we couldn't see the film. And then in this audience, and this woman stood up and she talked about her father, who she said she's never said this before, but just by seeing the trailer gave her license to talk about, because she would just sat there in silence, but somehow she she was allowed. I remember sitting there with Lupita for the first time, not knowing what would happen to her. This woman stood up and said that her father taught children how to read secretly, and then they found out and that he was poisoned, the father. And she had never said that before in public, and that helped her to see the trailer and what we were going to do. No one knew what 12 Years a Slave was like that. That was a Black Press Association in Atlanta. That was just after Trayvon Martin was murdered. So anything that could stir the pot, that can allow people to sort of feel themselves or be themselves or recognize themselves, I think is important.
Wayne asks, can you recall the first image, whether captured or simply witnessed, that shaped you? What made that moment so powerful?
Image? What's the question?
First image, whether captured or simply witnessed. The first thing that you remember seeing, either as a picture or as an event, that really shaped you.
Well, I don't know if it really shaped me, but I like The Singing Detective. I like that. It wasn't, I was told, how old was I? Singing Detective, when did that come out? Was that 84, 85, 86? I think it must have been 86, 87, Singing Detective. Who's got a phone? I think 87. The Singing Detective, that was 17, but a lot of other things did before that, but I never forget The Singing Detective. I thought, wow, what the hell?
What was it?
It was a bit raunchy as well. And my mother, she worked at the maternity hospital, and she would go out, and then my father would go, I'd put a telly on, 9:30, Singing Detective. People were humping and stuff, and weird stuff with skin and flesh and all kind of crazy shit. Yeah, so that was good. But also things like Play for the Day, and I remember going to the tape for the first time on the buses and the coaches, and they go to school and you get off and you go. I thought, oh shit, art. I thought, oh, so art could be important, as in they put it in a frame and they put it behind glass and on a plinth, and that was exciting. So those kind of things, seeing things, weird things, seeing weird things that I didn't understand was really cool. I mean, Dennis Potter. Yeah.
Just out of interest, given that we are approximately the same age, do you remember Roots?
I
do.
Do.
You remember when it came out?
I do.
Because I felt that was a signature moment for me as a 10-year-old watching this mini-series that follows a family story through slavery.
Yeah.
Did that have an impact on you?
Well, I remember that was the biggest TV show ever. The streets were cleared. It was a bit traumatic for me as a child. I think it was really kind of. I watched everything. It was just a bit heavy.
Yeah, I mean, it was heavy. I remember experiencing it mostly as telly.
Yes, yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. No, but I remember going to school and then the people doing Chicken George.
Oh yeah.
I mean, to get through a day, to get through any kind of situation of traumatic situations. Laughter was, oh my God, school was so funny. We didn't work. But I mean, how we got through was just laughing. I mean, the amount of nonsense that went on at school, the amount of horrid racism and ridiculous, but somehow we just made, laughter. I mean, it's like, even when, again, our parents, what they had to go through on a daily basis, going to work and being constantly humiliated and coming back. And I remember, there was a lot of black children were beaten. I was beaten with a belt. I was beaten. Everyone was beaten. But the next day we used to laugh about it. There's nothing to laugh about. We got physically abused with a belt and bamboo and shit. It was some heavy shit, man. It was some heavy shit. And they were coming. I'm laughing now, but it's a very, we're fucked up. We're fucked up.
Yes, we are.
I'm still standing. True survivor.
There is an element of kind of surviving Caribbean parenting from the 70s,
we were running from the belt. We were running from the police. Oh my God.
I know. There's an element of me thinking, why don't you use the belt on the police? Why are you using it on me? Anyway. From Jules asks, what was the most surprising form of resistance that you discovered? I'm assuming in the process of doing the exhibition.
Surprising. I just think the early environmental stuff was pretty amazing, was pretty surprising. The early environmental stuff was that was really kind of touching. I was like, wow, when there's the people sort of putting those bottles in front of buildings and knowing how we had to recycle, that was very impressive. I think also what the environment is, how that relates to what's going on now within our environment, that people were talking about that very, very, very early. So I think that was one of the most surprising things for me.
One of the interesting images for me is of a group of people. I want to get this right, but it appears to me they are people born as men and dressed as women.
Oh God, yeah,
who
fantastic,
are
amazing.
Demonstrating against Miss World or Miss Universe, and it just complicates the notion of, there are about 3 or 4 of them with placards, this notion of a cleavage between the trans community and the feminist community, because here are these people who are there protesting against the degradation of women, and that picture really struck me, because I thought, well, how times have changed.
I never forgot something. I never forgot. There was when I was a kid. I think how old was I then? I was young. Still am, Gary. And there was a Paul Gilroy told me something like, I remember him saying to me, well, I should be able, not even I should be able, we as a collective should be with any group to support them, because that's what it's about, marching with disabled people, marching with whoever group you're with. And it was very early, I think it was 22, 23, and for some reason that was a spark in my head. Well, I should be able to talk about them as much as they should talk about me. I was very powerful. That was that was very powerful. That was well, was I 20? Was 21, 20, 21, 20, 21. And it was just weird, because it's obvious, but the fact that we should be linked together with any kind of resistance, I thought that was very powerful. It's just a singular group. But at 21 years old to hear that was very important for me. And that's when, of course, your world is opening up when you're in university and you're listening to all kinds of arguments and opinions and views. And it's about that camaraderie and us, us. And all we.
I think in the slides we have pictures of some of the suffragettes. If you could pull those up, because one of the things I found interesting in looking at the pictures is that we know how. There they are, and it was particularly that they're in. It's a surveillance photograph.
They're just badasses, aren't they?
They really are. They really
don't fuck with me.
And.
So cool.
And this is true of all resistance, in a sense, that they don't know how it's going to turn out. No. Right? They're in the middle of it. They don't know. And as far as all of the common sense says that they are crazy women. That's what common sense is saying at the time. And there they are taking a stroll in the prison yard, and that with these pictures are of people making demands. They don't know that they're going to be met. They're fighting for a world they can't see, which I think is an incredibly kind of powerful. But these pictures of the suffragettes, they moved me. Also, the one of them, the police pictures of them.
I think that's beautiful what you just said. Fighting for a world they can't see. And it's easy to not get out of your bed. It's easy, and everything's holding us back. Gravity is holding us back, literally. But it's that situation where you just make that effort. And it's beautiful what you said. Beautiful, not knowing what will come out of it. But you're doing it for all the right reasons.
And one has to imagine that Martin Luther King gets to the steps of the Lincoln Memorial and says, I have a 10-point plan, which would have people would have said, 10-point plan, we can work with that. Yes, we can negotiate, point 1, point 7. But he doesn't, he has a dream. And the dream is a crazy dream. It's a dream that, just a few weeks later, 4 little girls are murdered at Sunday school in Birmingham. And he's dreaming of little kids holding hands and so on. And that utopian power of not being confined to your moment.
Well, that's it. It's to imagine, it's to make. It's possible to find and to discover and not to be afraid of making mistakes or not being popular or not being liked. Or don't get me wrong, it's not easy. Don't get me wrong, but I just thought again when I think of myself in that school, and this kid right at the front of the fucking blackboard with a fucking patch over his eye, NHS glasses, and dyslexic. And I think, obviously I was out of my fucking mind to think, I want to be an artist or I want to do this. But, again, one has to fucking dream. Sorry, my mum wouldn't like me swearing. But, yeah, you have to. Otherwise, you just stay exactly where you are. And, hey, I might have not done it. But, again, I would have got somewhere.
And is there something about art in that art gives you the possibility to imagine things in a way that...
Well, it's language, isn't it? It's language. It's language and creating language, or inventing language, or and visual language, or again, or people responding to that language. It's like, I imagine it's like music and hearing a note or putting 12 notes and putting one note, elongating one and shortening the other, and manipulating something else can actually break through someone's armor and enter intellectually, physically, emotionally, and have them in a state of transition, wherever that is. I think that's that, and that could get you on your feet, and that could get you marching. It's what the power of what things can do. Again, and you recognize it, and you smell it, and you hear it, and you taste it. These other things which are going on. I'm going on a bit, but it is what we yearn for in one way, and often is what we don't recognize, but is familiar but unrecognizable, or unrecognizable but and familiar. Immediately you have it in you bring it inside of you. It's visceral.
From, I hope I'm getting this right, Mathieu, who asked, would you be drawn to documenting acts of resistance firsthand through photography? So capturing it in a documentary style?
Not for me, no. They're better people than me, no.
Right. Are you ever tempted? If you see a big demonstration, I can see by your face that's
no.
Okay.
But it's amazing. No, that's not for me. No, but I don't know to answer other than no. Sorry. Next question. No.
This is an interesting one. Might be a hard one. I don't have a name, but it says, I'm in my mid-20s. I'm disillusioned with the world. It's a lot of disillusionment. Regressive politics, economy, nostalgic culture, etc. What 3 pieces of media would you recommend for me to feel light in the world?
Well, go see Resistance, the show, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Get the book.
Trip to Margate and you get the seaside thrown in.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's way more hope than one thing than you might think. Again, it's not being all sucked into this media stuff which is going on and telling you how to think or telling you how to feel. Again, you can make your environment. Again, it's the things which are immediate to you, which are at your fingertips, which is at your reach, that you could change. 100%. So I wouldn't feel disillusioned at all. I will feel encouraged to sort of to sort of, again, don't get me wrong, there are certain things around you that sort of push you back. But I mean, it's you're living in a sort of an age where you can actually discover things, and more than that, you discover things in a way that I couldn't when I was your age, for sure not.
And I think as well that there is a process, right? That the people that you see who are coming to the front in the resistance in these pictures and so on, they too were disillusioned. it's not necessarily caught on camera, but there was a process of disillusionment before things had to get bad, before they would say, right, we're going to come out and we're going to do something about that. That is a logical, if unfortunate, part of the process, really. And there's a great quote from June Jordan, who was an African-American feminist, who said, "We are the ones that we've been waiting for." That sometimes that disillusionment comes from thinking somebody must really do something about this. And it turns out that that somebody is you. And that
100%.
there is a good chance that there are lots of other people saying the same thing. And they were all waiting for somebody to jump first. Which is that's when, and I don't mean this in a social media sense, although it can be, when protest goes viral. Because people catch the bug. And suddenly, in the words of the great Paul Weller, walls come tumbling down. From Lena. As a daughter of Iraqi refugees, I grew up thinking that protest couldn't drive change. What would you say to someone like my younger self about the value of protest, even when it feels like you're not being heard?
Again, I just think that you're doing something about it. You're not just taking it. If there's a physicality to it, but also there's a situation that you, in order to sort of to feel present, to feel recognized, is to do something. Not that protest is not just in mass demonstrations and what little you can do in your immediate world. Absolutely, I just feel that I'm really encouraged. Again, this is a bigger thing, but even what happened recently with Harvard, I was so encouraged by that. To fight back. If someone punches you, punch them back. One has to sort of, in what little you could do. You're not paralyzed. I'm just talking what anyone would say here. I feel that the young people, come on now, flipping heck, we're relying on you. Jesus, come on, get with it. No, seriously, these kids get off the fucking phone and do something, or on the phone and do something, either.
Yeah, there's no guarantee that when you fight, you'll win.
No.
But there's an absolute guarantee that if you don't fight, you can't win. You've got to buy a ticket to win the lottery.
And also, if you go down, you go down. But guess what? You went down fighting. Fuck them.
Yeah. I think it's attributed to La Passinaria that it's better to die on your feet than to live on your knees. Better still is to live on your feet, though. But one of the more interesting acts of protest that I've seen in my life, which is worth sharing, I think, because it illustrates these small things, but it was a thing. Was that I lived in what was then Leningrad for 6 months. I studied Russian at university. And the woman that I was staying with, she would walk her dog at 9 o'clock each night. I'm not really into dogs, so, goodbye, 9 o'clock, see you in a bit. One night, I thought I'd go out for a walk with her, and it was kind of about 3 minutes 9. She was like, come on, we got to go. And as we went out, I saw all of these people with dogs walking towards the park at the same time. And I said, well, what's going on? And she said, well, we call it the dog hour, because this is a time when the news is on and we don't trust the news. So we walk our dogs. And that this was their protest, that this was their way of saying, basically, fuck you and your state media, we're not listening. And it wasn't the first sign to me, because there was a lot going on, but it was a sign that, oh wow, they have really, really lost influence here. And I guess you can walk your dog and protest. You can, and there are in these pictures, there are people dancing and protesting. There are people kissing and protesting. That there are, what we can't have is people quoting Audre Lorde and saying, self-care is a radical act, and then going to a spa day and saying it's politics. That's not what we're talking about. But that there are a range of things that can be politics that don't have to be demonstrated.
I know, again, go back to those blues parties, and I think, there would have been a huge psychosis if those things didn't happen. Absolutely, to be in the dark with the bass, music, and people who were similar to you being in that a different state of mind with music. It was a different kind of spiritual gathering, which was hugely defiant. And people tried to break up, but it was hugely to be oneself within the moment, but to be out of the narrative for a Saturday night,
From Helen, I'm not sure if that's the same Helen as before, whether there are two Helens. All things are possible. You haven't mentioned your film Grenfell. Can you place it in the context of this discussion about resistance? Good question.
Well, cool, blimey. Grenfell. Well, I was actually in Chicago making Widows when the Grenfell fire happened. And to see the front page of the New York Times with that building, with the Grenfell Tower gutted, was just wrenching for me. And then when I saw that, I knew instinctively I had to do something about it. I didn't know what, but I knew I had to do something. I was born around the corner from Grenfell. I was born in Hammersmith Hospital. That part of the woods was, a lot of my family came from Ladbroke Grove. I had a stall in Ladbroke Grove. It's just sell what they call it vintage now, sell secondhand clothes underneath the Westway. And the carnival, of course. So it was really West London. It meant something to me, my community as such. And I needed to do something. And that's all I knew. I needed to do something. And I didn't know what. I had no idea what. And then, I just knew I had to be witness to it. Somehow I needed it not to be forgotten. And the whole idea of circumnavigating it, sort of circling this building, to trace this building, with a helicopter sort of going out of London and putting the building in context to London, this journey, and to circumnavigate, to rotate, to sort of trace, to spiral around this in order to sort of gather, in order to sort of document, but it wasn't document, it was more. Anyway, when I was in a helicopter going towards the building, because I felt an embrace. I felt welcome. Anyway, we did a lot of prep beforehand. And for me, it was about not forgetting and having it in people's consciousness. That was important to me. And I had to be up there myself. It wasn't a stupid drone or that kind of nonsense. It was me almost having my eyes on it myself from that vantage point, and to it's almost like whirling dervishes, almost spinning to get close to the fucking God or whatever. But I had to be, it couldn't be, you saw it, you didn't see it. It had to be looked at. It had to be remembered. It had to be, I didn't want it out of people's minds. And that was it really. That was the idea I had. And again, and again, knowing the community, knowing the area, and how important it was. Just down the road, my dad's best friend, opened. What was it? It was the Back in Yao. It was they grew up in a place called Paradise, and again, in Grenada, would you believe? So it's just, I needed to do that. It was important. I'm going on a bit, but it was one of those things which was about documenting, but also how do you come to this situation and create something that has some kind of moment, really, that could last, not just for now, but 100 years. It's very, very important.
James Baldwin spoke about the burden of representation, the burden of, I think Shonda Rhimes calls it first, only, and different. So, there are, when you're talking about Grenfell there, I'm imagining you have a sense, you see it in the New York Times, you think, I have to do this. But is there any sense that you have of a burden of expectation that comes from you doing it, that people are going to want a specific thing, or that kind of, that people almost offshore, outsource whatever hope or sense of resistance or frustration they have on you, and say, "Can you do that for me? Do that, Do you feel any burden, expectation?"
No, I want the weight. I want the burden. I want the burden. Give it to me. Put it on my shoulder. I want it. Oh yeah, I'll have it, because it's one of those situations where I need to do it. I need it, because I know if I don't, no one will. So that's the lady said, "What can I do?" Well, you can do a hell of a lot just by wanting to do something and needing to do something. And again, it's what my interpretation is my interpretation. But it's come from a want and a need and a must, or a must and a want and a need.
So to some extent, there's a self-imposed burden there. If you
it's
think
not a burden. No. It's self-imposed. I think there's nothing negative about it. I'm here for the service of the people, because people have been of the service of me. I'm blessed. I'm grateful, and again, it's not a situation where I feel that I have to do something about this. It's just because the wealth is there, and it's necessary, and it's important, and it has the weight, and I need that. Again, I'm not here to play. I'm just not here to play.
We are at the end of the evening, and that's a very good place to end. Steve is not here to play. He has taken the resistance of the past and put it into the service of the resistance of the present, so that we might have a different future, a better future, a future maybe that we cannot see, but that is worth fighting for nonetheless, because people couldn't see us here when we started school, and yet here we are. So this is the last 100 years.
And forgive me, and we benefited. I mean, the reason, again, I know what my parents sacrificed. I know what other people sacrificed. I know that. And I know that, sitting here and talking to you, it's impossible. You talking to me or other people in this audience, it's impossible. So it is a worthy cause to stand up and to be heard. It's a worthy cause. Worthy. I mean, what the hell are we going to do? What are we going to do? We're going to die anyway, like I said. We're going to die anyway, so you might as well go out two guns blazing. It's imperative. And I'm repeating this mantra, but it's the God honest truth. When you're dead, no one gives a shit. You're dead. So go out and do your shit.
So this was 100 years. There's another, who knows where we'll be in another 100 years, because 100 years ago we couldn't have imagined this. Steve McQueen says, whatever you do when you go out, take some people down with you. Thank you. You've been listening to part 2 of a special episode of Over the Top, Under the Radar, featuring Steve McQueen in conversation with myself, recorded live at an Intelligence Squared event at London's Union Chapel in April.
We have the platform to bring you conversations like this because of your support. The team and I make this podcast because we believe there's an audience of people out there like us, like you, who are progressive, have a sense of humour and irony, and are being let down by so-called mainstream media. If you enjoy the pod and find value in what we do, please consider donating. The packages start at just £5 plus VAT a month, and if you already donate, please consider upgrading your membership. It really makes a difference to us. You can search Over the Top, Under the Radar on Patreon and put your money where your ears are. If you subscribe, you'll be kept up to date with the podcast and future events through our newsletter and have access to our WhatsApp community. You can also find us all over social media: Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, and X at over_under_pod.